I was able to attend a portion of an entrepreneurial training class in Jackson in September. This was a 10-week entrepreneurial class. And I sat in on a portion of day 3. And so there was a group of entrepreneurs ranging from folks who wanted to open up a donut shop in downtown Jackson to videographers, people making different homeopathic medicines, just a range of people. And the day I was there, they were working on perfecting their pitch. And it was a real fascinating opportunity for me to be reminded of some of these things that I may have known and have forgotten, but it really is a matter of taking a step back. So the instructor was talking about, in developing the pitch, not starting with the what it is that you do, or not starting with the how is it that you do what you do, but the essence of what you do, the why. And the instructor referenced quite a bit from the book, Start with the Why, which I recommend you take a look at, and use the example of Apple. In positioning itself against its other competitors, it understood that its pitch was the why, the very essence of what they're doing. Whereas other computer companies are saying, we make great computers. Apple was saying, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. And that's their pitch, and it's really engaging. And it sets them apart. It's inspiring. So this class asked me to give the pitch of what the Wyoming Business Council is. So I thought, well, what we are is our mission statement. And I'll just say our mission statement. And that was, we facilitate Wyoming's economic growth. And the room was completely silent. And a few people yawned. And I thought, I've got to work on this. So you think about that, facilitating Wyoming's economic growth. If there is any government word, it is facilitating. To me, facilitating means we're going to have a meeting and we'll bring different people together, and then we'll meet and we'll facilitate the meeting. Wyoming's economic growth, that sounds very government-y. So it was helpful for me to think, we need to take a step back. We don't facilitate Wyoming's economic growth. What we do is we increase Wyoming's prosperity. We're increasing Wyoming's prosperity for businesses and entrepreneurs, families and individuals, communities. That entrepreneurial class was also very interesting to me because there was a young woman there. She was maybe in her early 20s. She actually developed a product that she calls the Baby Bounce. And it is, in essence, kind of one of those yoga balls that you sit on with peg legs. And she calls it the rocking chair of the 21st century. She has taken this concept to trade shows, and she's gotten orders for this bouncy chair for nursing mothers. But it was apparent to her at some point that she needed to take a step back and understand the ins and outs of running a business and those mundane things like balance sheets and pro forma statements and how to select an attorney and how to do QuickBooks. So she was educating herself. There are likely people like her across the state of Wyoming, and we've got to be able to identify those people and make sure that we've got the tools to make her and those other people as successful as possible. And we do have a great toolbox, but we've always got to be recalibrating to make sure that it's responsive to small business needs. Wanted to visit about another entrepreneur met. I actually met him when he was 7 years old. When I went to the University of Wyoming, me and my roommates were lucky enough to find a house that wasn't in the traditional college neighborhoods. It was in a residential neighborhood. Actually, it wasn't too far from where I think Paul Howard lives. So it's on the corner of 9th and Steele. And so there were 3 college students living in this family neighborhood. Our next door neighbors had 4 unruly boys who were always playing basketball in the middle of the street. Dad would walk to Napa Auto Parts where he worked and walk home at night. The mom was a stay-at-home teacher. She taught all 4 boys. And those boys thought we were a bit of an anomaly just because we were college students, and we'd sit out on the porch at night and they'd all be asking us questions and playing in our yard and stuff. I lost track of these boys. There's no reason I would have kept in touch with them, but I got a call from one of them just this past summer. And he said, hey, we're trying to put together a conference in Jackson to bring entrepreneurs in touch with venture capitalists and technology executives. And it turns out that this boy I knew as a 7-year-old, whose name is John Tempty, is now a very successful entrepreneur who's created Tempty Capital Funds. He invests in and acquires high-growth companies. He cut his teeth in Silicon Valley. He became partners with one of the founders of PayPal, and they're still in business together. He's back in Laramie, and he's spreading this very interesting message about why entrepreneurs, why tech startup companies should be doing business in the state of Wyoming versus Silicon Valley. Whereas in Silicon Valley, engineers or programmers or startups are lost in the mix of hundreds of thousands of similar people. Here in the state of Wyoming, where you've got less than 600,000 people, you stand out. And he believes, and I think he's right, that it's very important and advantageous to be in a state like Wyoming, where you have almost immediate access to people like Governor Meade or decision makers. Not only that, there's an incredible amount of capital here in the state of Wyoming, wealth, people who are willing to invest in ideas. He also believes very strongly in the concepts of creating shared space so that entrepreneurs can cross-pollinate, that they can be co-located with chambers of commerce or economic development groups and share the copy machine, but more importantly, share ideas and best practices. He's also a very strong proponent of the notion of having a strong mentorship network so that entrepreneurs and startups have a network of people who have been there, done that, who can give advice, if not a little bit of capital. So he's really working on promoting those concepts here in the state of Wyoming. But we, I think, need to take a step back and ask ourselves, reflect on what we are doing. What are we doing to create mentorship networks? What are we doing to promote access to capital? What are we doing to take full advantage of and continue to increase the value proposition for the state of Wyoming? What are we doing to make sure that business is easier to do here in Wyoming than anywhere else? A couple weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to meet 2 young entrepreneurs who were developing a company that is basically, it's hard to describe exactly, but it's a profile page. What they saw, kind of the issue that they wanted to solve was, saw all these high school graduates who are trying to apply to colleges, and They're given forms to fill out that give, their personal information. Then there's standard resume formats. But what they're used to, these high school graduates, they're used to having Facebook pages and using social media. And they don't feel that a resume is a true reflection of who they are. And it's not being presented in the way that they're familiar with presenting themselves in a social media way. And then on the other side, college admission officers are continually looking for the best fit, the students who will best fit with their school. And they've come to realize that you don't get that from a paper application. So these two guys have created these pages. Well, this company, where a student can create a page that includes a video clip, access to information about what they did in dance or on the football field or what they did at the state debate championship. All sorts of information that gives a complete picture of that person in a way that's much more telling than just a paper application. Now, these two founders of this startup, one of them right now is in Silicon Valley. The other one is in Buffalo, Wyoming. And we are trying to work with them, using those same concepts that John Tempte is sharing with us. Work with them to say, hey, you are going to be more successful in the state of Wyoming than you will be in Silicon Valley, because you're not going to be one of a million with a good idea. You're going to rise to the top. And it makes more sense to do business here in the state of Wyoming. So we use John Tempte's same concept that there's an advantage here in Wyoming in that you have such access to decision leaders. We set up a meeting with Governor Meade. So these two 20-year-olds with a startup company have a meeting with the governor of the state of Wyoming. Now imagine that happening with Governor Brown in California, or any other governor for that matter. So they give their pitch to the governor, show him their product. And he says, wow, I get it. I see what you're doing. But I see this being much bigger than matching up prospective students with prospective colleges. State of Wyoming, we've got 300 open positions with the Department of Corrections that we can't get filled. We have industries in Wamsutter, Wyoming that can't attract a workforce. This would be a great tool to match employers with employees. And beyond that, the governor has an initiative to bring back to the state of Wyoming folks who graduated and moved on. This would be a great way to show them what opportunities there are. They became instantly excited because he took it one step further. What he saw was this business would be able to solve a long-standing problem that the state of Wyoming has had, the state government can't solve. So we continue to work with that company, trying to get them access to capital and develop those mentorship networks. But beyond that particular company that we ultimately want in Buffalo or somewhere in Wyoming, we need to take a step back and say, what are we doing to help businesses and entrepreneurs who can solve problems that we have that the state government can't solve? What are we doing to sponsor innovation and improve the value proposition of doing business here in the state of Wyoming? So that's what we've been doing at the Business Council for the past several months. We've been taking a step back, and we're asking, what do we have the greatest access to the tools to help entrepreneurs? Do we have the best ways in which we're helping sponsor innovation, developing networks of mentorship and access to capital, and helping businesses do business in the state of Wyoming? Beyond that, beyond taking the step back and back to one of the lessons I learned at the governor's office, you've always got to be able to answer the question, how do we know that it's working? How do we know? And so we're focusing more than we ever have before on performance. And part of that is the job that Tom Johnson has now, Chief Performance Officer. We just created it. There's not many comparables to having something like that, but it's really intended to look at our targeted audiences, whether it's entrepreneurs or communities or businesses, individuals, and are we responsive to their needs? And I use the we as in a collective. Business Council, our partners with the Business Resource Network. Beyond, are we hitting our targets, our programs? How do we know they're successful? How do we know that they're doing what they were designed to do? How do we measure success, and how are we tracking it? So we've compiled a list of maybe 70-some programs and services at the Business Council, which is a huge amount. And now we're going through and saying, how do we know? How do we know when we've succeeded with this? How are we measuring it? The idea is that we, as Wyoming Business Council, we have to think entrepreneurial about our services too. And we have to figure out if something's not working, let's step away and let's be willing to take a risk and try something new. But we've got to know what's working and how we can communicate that. And then the final part of this was keep it to 5 things. So we've been developing a strategic plan. That plan has 5 pillars. One is that we're going to think big. And thinking big is about industrial development, strengthening our base, trying to accomplish that elusive notion of adding value to our natural resources. Second, we're going to think small, and that's about small business. It's about helping small businesses be as successful as they can, and expanding, adding jobs, adding customers, but also helping with the entrepreneur to make sure that she or he has those tools necessary to succeed. So we think big, we think small, we think new. We want to grow Wyoming's technology sector. And there's 2 pieces to that. One is on the infrastructure side, and Governor Mead's done quite a bit with, and he talked about this yesterday, with the broadband network and getting communities gigabit service. But the other piece of that is the actual business development and the entrepreneurs, and fostering a climate of innovation and helping those 2 guys develop their profile pages, get them to do that in Wyoming. Helping John Tempte create this mentorship network. Defining clusters of technology companies that will solve the state's problems that we can't, like telehealth and telemedicine and those sorts of things. So we think big, we think small, we think new, we think local. Kind of an underpinning of all of this is that we've got to have cool, vibrant communities in order to attract this workforce, in order to make people want to stay and grow a business. Part of that's infrastructure and continuing to invest in ourselves. Part of it's leadership development. Part of it is reminding people that economic development has to be a public and a private priority, that it can't work without both of those pieces. And if we think local, then we should be thinking globally. We should be thinking about opportunities for the state of Wyoming, Wyoming's businesses and industries that are outside of our borders, and that have a national and international reach. We've done quite a bit over the past several years explaining to the world that we are an energy leader. We need to be doing that same thing with manufacturing and our technology companies, agriculture, tourism, and so forth. So we're working on developing that, the backbone of that plan right now. We're looking at our programs and services. We're doing much more measurement than we have in the past. But I'll just conclude by saying I think it's always important to take a step back. And I think particularly with entrepreneurs and startups, businesses that are successful or those that have failed, take a step back and what lessons can we learn from those people, those companies, that we can apply to help others in the future. It's very important to have opportunities to meet like this, to be able to bring business partners like the Small Business Development Center, Market Research Center. All of these things are great assets that we have to make sure that the business community, entrepreneurs know about. So I really appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate just the underpinnings of having this type of annual conference. It's very important, and I'm glad to have been part of it. Thanks.